Hello, and welcome to our first official Q&A session. Like the event I did yesterday, still working out the streaming software, so bear with me on that. But I think I'm getting a much better handle on it. It would appear as if my internet connection has dropped. So I'll wait for that to come back. Not sure what's going on. It says my stream status is good, but I have no idea. Let me know if you guys can actually hear me. I guess I'll just keep going. We'll see how this works. If it ends up being really bad, then maybe I'll just do it over later. But don't want to make everybody wait any longer. So let's see. We had a few questions come in, and I'm going to run through those. So we had this question, and actually, I didn't read it well enough the first time around, and I thought they were asking what UX and UI is. I didn't catch the jQuery extension part. So I wanted to run through that really quick. Let's see if I can switch this. I don't like the glare on my glasses, so I'm going to turn that off. There we go. So, jQuery UI. There isn't a jQuery UX, although that term goes with UI quite a bit. But jQuery UI is, well, here's a good definition, but you can use it along with jQuery, and it gives you a bunch of easy options for creating things that are draggable, droppable, resizable, selectable, and sortable, and a bunch of widgets to pick from. So I'm going to click on the demos here. I haven't been here in a long time. I haven't actually used jQuery UI in a while. I think I got this question from one of our videos, so forgive me if I'm forgetting, but maybe I was using this at one point during our videos or something like that. And it's a good tool, and it's a good thing to know. I just haven't used it in a while, so I haven't looked at these demos in a while either. So let's see what we can see. So there's an example of the draggable element, or being able to drag an element, that is. I know they give you the code down here. So if you've got the library already, if you load the library up as a script after loading jQuery, then it's as easy as telling jQuery which element you want to select, which they're saying this one here, and I want to make it draggable. So now you can move this around. Now, other than dragging it around, you really can't do much with it. And that's where droppable comes in. But there's also some other examples here, some of the other options that you can use with draggable. So we'll look at some of these. scroll. Okay, so that's allowing the page to scroll as you drag. It looks as if you're controlling the sensitivity of the scrolling. This one's kind of annoying. Let's see. I know I've used this one quite a bit. This one's the draggable mixed with the sortable. It's over here on the left. So you can drag this and move it. I believe these are list items. Yeah. So you could drag these and reorder them. And I believe you can get a jQuery object, or JavaScript object anyway, that will give you the new order of each item. If you wanted to do something with them, this isn't very handy here, but if you gave, say, the list items an ID or use the data attribute to give them some sort of identification, then when you get that jQuery object back, you can check which item is which and in what order. And you could use that to, say, update a database or something. So there's that. Let's see, selectable. All right, so I'm holding down Control. So this is selectable. I'm assuming if I use Shift, I can probably select a bunch. Nope, that doesn't work. So same deal here. This probably gives it a, although it's not, this isn't live updating. I'm assuming this gives you back some sort of identification that they've been selected. So it's some pretty great tools. Some of this stuff, or part of the reason why I don't know that I've used it as much as I've gotten more into using JavaScript and jQuery a little more extensively, and oh, sorry, I'm reading comments now. Ah, that's right. Now I remember. Thanks for reminding me. So I've learned how to do some of these things on my own, and bringing in this extra library or whatever they would call it isn't always necessary. But it does have really great features out of the box. Let's see. Droppable's nice because you can drag something and drop it in here. And then you can check to see if something was actually dropped. There should be a property or something that will return. Yeah, okay, so drop. So we make this element droppable, and then we say when it drops on that event of a drop, do something. So we could, again, send something to a database saying this has been dropped, or alert you, or pop up right here. It's just saying dropped in the box there, which let me flip back to it. So it's saying once the drop event has happened, change the HTML of the drop. What do they call it? The droppable div. Change that to say dropped. So there's a bunch of other features in here. Again, some of this stuff with HTML5, some of these things are already available now, built in with HTML5. That's another reason why maybe I haven't deferred to using this right away, like I may have in the past. Progress bar, things like this. This is stuff like, if you're using Bootstrap or something, they've got progress bars, and all you would need to do is update. I think, let's see. All right, yeah, that's right. So basically, instead of maybe using this, if you need a progress bar, whenever you need to update it, all you need to do is use, say, jQuery or JavaScript to update the width property to whatever percent you want this bar to be at. So that's examples of how you can do this without jQuery UI. I feel like I'm not doing jQuery UI any justice here because I'm saying I don't use it much anymore. But I recommend using it because it's if you aren't as strong with JavaScript and doing a lot of these things on the fly on your own, then this is a great start, which is likely why I had used it. There's also, let's see, some effects. So these are a lot of nice things that, again, you can do a lot of these with HTML5 and CSS 3, but if you want them already done for you, here they are. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Again, I thought the original question was, what is the UX and the UI? And I'll take just a second to answer that just in case anybody is unfamiliar with those two terms. UX is short for user interface, user experience. And UI is user interface. This would be the interface, the navigation, the contents area, things like that. People have full-time jobs doing just UI design. It's pretty crazy. Great, but it's crazy. I mean, they basically get paid to draw placeholders and boxes where certain things should be, like the navigation here, content here, and decide what the best user interface could be. And they may work, they may also be the UX designer, or they may work with a UX designer. And for UX, it's user experience. And that's kind of somebody that comes up with the entire flow of everything. And that includes the UI. So, the user experience is trying to figure out what would make the best user experience on the site, on the application, the software, the phone app, etc. And I've read some articles lately that UX designers, a lot of companies are actually, instead of hiring graphic design people, they're hiring people with psychology degrees. And I think that's kind of cool and interesting because a graphic designer knows what looks good, and they might be able to place some things good and have a good idea of what's popular, what's the trend as far as layout and design goes. But somebody with psychology knowledge is better to kind of dive into how a human would want to interact with something. What is the best place to put something? How do we want people to get here to here? How do we get them to do what we want? Which is actually something that I'm going to talk about in next week's event, having to do with getting traffic to your site and things like that. Because that's a big part of it, is not just getting traffic, but keeping them there and getting them to do what you want them to do. That's very important. But I'll dive into that later. So let's see, let's go to the next question. So most of these questions actually aren't necessarily how-to questions, which is what I was thinking I was going to get, and I'm not complaining. These are good questions. So this is, have you been working with the latest JavaScript technologies? Yes, and no. I have worked with things. I'm assuming we're talking about things like Node.js and stuff like that. And Node.js is pretty awesome. However, I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to dive into it. I've been doing, even though that is server end, a lot of what I've been doing lately during the day and the day job is Python and shell scripts and things like that. So I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to dive into things like that. I've had a buddy of mine wanting me to get into React.js. That's another one actually. Here, let me pull up browser here. So there's Node, which I'm sure you guys have all heard of. Then React. I believe React was a Facebook owned project. It might still be. Yep, Facebook. And if I understand it correctly, I'm pretty sure React is a way to create JavaScript apps that you can deploy on all devices. So this is kind of building off of what was started with things like PhoneGap, or I believe it's called Cordova now, or it has been for a while. I think this is really awesome. And again, I haven't had enough time to, or any project that warranted me diving into this yet. But the fact that we can use web technology to deploy across all devices, I think is pretty awesome. And maybe I think that's awesome just because I'm a web developer and not a conventional software developer. But I feel like there's just a lot of things you can do with the web. There's a lot involved with it. You have to know a whole bunch of different languages and understand a bunch of things that maybe you don't understand with as a software developer. And that's kind of vice versa there. Same goes with us web developers. There's a lot of things that go into standard software design that and development that we don't get. But this is a cool thing to look into. I remember, I know I did a tutorial on it. I believe this uses Node also. And just the things you can do it's so quick. And you can, you can preview things right there next to the code as you're going. Yeah, it's worth taking a look at. Again, I haven't had a use for it yet, and that's kind of where I go lately. If I don't have a use, I don't get a chance to dive into it. So I look for uses. I hope I can get uses for things like this, so I can dive into it. Let's look at the next question. So this goes along kind of with this. This was in a thread on Facebook. What if I did a series on Android applications with Java? And my response on there, if you guys didn't see, was that I'm not comfortable enough with my understanding of Java and building Android applications to do a big series on it. Only because same with the Node.js and stuff like that. Haven't had a lot of opportunity to get into a project that warranted that. But I did mention in that thread that I had gone through the getting started or something, whatever they called it with Google. And I learned a bunch doing that. It was a little cumbersome to get started, and but once I got through it, I was able to make a nice application that gave me a good idea of how to lay something out and how to get things talking to each other. So that was pretty cool. And I thought, if I do have a chance to do another series here soon, maybe I'll walk through that tutorial and kind of do a video helper tutorial along with their tutorial. But not sure yet on that one, but that might be helpful. And I'm reading the chat here. So you know about that one, Butterfly Bonanza. I did not actually build that. I did the graphics for that. All the graphics were my work. A buddy of mine did all the programming for that. I kind of forgot that was there. My kids love that game. I think he stopped working on it though. But that's funny. I'm reading the question or the chat above you. All right, so this is a good one. Let's see. I'm just going to flip back to this card here. Mikey said it's not really a question. This is from John in the chat. I did the same thing. I stuck with procedural for a long time because it made sense to me. I could understand it. Object-oriented programming, I kind of got it, but I didn't. Any book I read just confused me. And then any tutorial I'd ever seen, they used the same kind of standard explanation that any of the books I read did. So I didn't get very far. I don't remember when it finally clicked. I was working on a project and I kind of had to learn real fast before anybody knew that I wasn't comfortable. That's we do that a lot, I think, as web developers. And since I was forced to figure it out, I kind of won't go back. But that's not to say that sticking to procedural isn't a bad idea for now. If you want to keep learning and not get frustrated and give up, then I'd say stick with what you know for now until you get comfortable to dive into object-oriented programming. It is great. It's I might think about that a little bit and bring it into the next Q&A session with a better, maybe quick run through on object-oriented programming. I'll think of a better way to describe it than the books I read, because that's actually how I feel I would describe it right now if I attempted to. But no, that's good. I'll keep that in mind. I might bring that up next time. I'm going to flip to the next question. So I get asked this one a lot. Probably been asked this at least once a month for the last couple of years. Considering the last one was, I believe, 2014. A lot of things have changed since then, along with my understanding of things. One being me being more into object-oriented programming. So if I did do a series like the dynamic one again, I would do it way different. I would probably use an MVC. I think I used the way I did that series. I kind of made my own version of that, of MVC framework. but now that I've worked a lot more with MVC frameworks, I realize how much better I could approach that. And I think that would be great. I think another thing that would be a great series is understanding APIs and how to make APIs, how to communicate with them. So not only not only making one yourself, but how to actually use them, because they're pretty amazing. The amount of applications out there that allow you to use their API. I mean, for instance, Google and YouTube. I pull in videos using their API onto my website, and APIs can be kind of scary if you don't necessarily know what you're doing. And a lot of them are documented pretty well. Google's not very good with that, oddly enough, but some of them are documented so well that you can kind of just copy and paste code and they kind of work, but you may not totally get what you're doing or understand why this is working. So I think that would be a really great thing to dive into is APIs, how to use them and how to make one. And because those are really great. It's a great way to interact with your application or your website, to use an API rather than the way we did it in the dynamic series, where we're doing direct queries to the database. You can instead use Ajax and things like that to go out and make requests to your API and grab data that way and spit it out into, say, JSON or XML or something and suck it up. Excuse me. But the other nice thing about that is if you have one and you have a website or a product that you would like other people to be able to get information from you, this is a good maybe way to advertise or get more people involved in what you're doing, is to give them access to some of the data. And you can write your API to allow users to come in and get only the data that, say, you allow them to, that they should have access to. But then they can grab that data, and then you could possibly use that as a way to get people more familiar with your product or your site or whatever. But anyway, I think, to go back to this question, hold on. I think I'm trying to find the time to do a series. I think that's my biggest thing. Most of the series I did in the past, I was working for myself. So my schedule was pretty much whatever I wanted it to be. Now that I work for a development company, my whole day is eaten up with that. So I don't get a lot of time to sit and plan them, which is why I started doing these, because I think it's a way for me to continue to get some content out, but not have to wait until I have the time to plan some big thing out. I mean, even those series, I didn't plan them all out completely, but I did at least have a goal in mind. A lot of them I was just kind of doing on the fly and doing stuff as I went. But I also, if I do another big series, I want to have an end goal in mind rather than kind of just going and going and going until I, run out of ideas or I run out of time. And then I feel like I leave people hanging. Although that last series, I think I put out over 100 videos, so I think at least you got some good stuff out of that. I haven't tried Zend. The only framework that I've done much with is CodeIgniter. I used that on a project recently. Yeah, I have done Magneto a while back. John. I'm glad to see John's here. Yeah, work. No, actually, my not to get distracted here, but my job's pretty fun. So even though I work for a firm, I mostly work at home, and pretty much get to do projects that I'm kind of just let loose to take it in the direction, not necessarily any direction I want to go, but I know what we need, and I'm going to attack it the way we need. So it's pretty fun. I often, but part of the reason I don't have time to do videos is sometimes I'm working at night or on the weekends because I like my job so much. So I would use the term loosely if we're talking about work in the sense of not enjoying our work, John. But back to the frameworks, mostly CodeIgniter. I used it a long time ago on a project. I can't say what it was. But it was a big project, and I had no idea what I was doing with it. This was like 8 years ago, I think. So that was my first jump into that. And then I used Magneto, I think, unless I'm getting that confused with something else, but I feel like I used it in some OS or in some e-commerce sense. John, you're killing me. And just so you know, there's a lag. So when I see your guys' questions, you guys are probably hearing me answer them or respond to them 10, 20 seconds later, or maybe minutes. But that's funny. But yeah, so, but then I used CodeIgniter on a more recent project. That was pretty fun. Can't talk much about it. That's the beauty of NDA contracts, but it was a good decision rather than trying to do everything from scratch and make my own thing. Picking one, that's kind of what we did. I think I brought this up on another event, but we kind of just grabbed one and went with it rather than thinking too much about all the options out there, because I know that a lot of people are big into Laravel too. But no, I don't. I had used boilerplates, and I mostly for. Sorry, this is it. I should probably say the question for people that are watching this later. The question was, so you don't use boilerplates so much when it comes to PHP. I'd say I have, and I've used my own thing, kind of my own version of what we did in the last dynamic series, the Atom. But I've been doing other things so much that I haven't even really touched, other than working on my own website and a couple other things. I haven't touched PHP much. Like in my day job, like I said, it's mostly Python and stuff. So I don't even know necessarily how to answer that, because I don't know what I would do now. I know I would definitely grab up a framework and pick one and use it. I probably wouldn't start from scratch like I had in the past. But yeah, a lot of the things I've been working on lately they're not websites necessarily, and they're not full applications. I'm building tools, things that communicate, using Python and stuff to communicate with other tools, other APIs, and build things. But do I use anything else other than Python? I use Python a lot, because a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what I'm doing at least, are console, a terminal, shell, kind of run it in the command line apps. So Python's really great for that. I've done a bunch of shell scripting, but I did a bunch of shell scripting because it was more familiar to me before I got more into Python. But now that I've gotten more into Python, I've ditched most of the shell scripting unless I absolutely have to use it. But I'd say I've been using a lot of Python, but I've also been doing things like, excuse me, I've been doing a lot with Google Scripts lately, and that's been really fun. I want to do something on that here soon because I don't think people realize how much capability you have with working with Google Scripts. Also, that combined with using Python and the Google API to interact between the two. There's some pretty cool things you can do there. Let's see what John's saying here. Oh, yeah. I pull up John's asking about what we worked on when we were doing the Live Speak Radio show. I had a pretty neat tool in the works as we were doing this show in order for us to pull up or interact together. Since John's over in Ireland and Justin, the other host, is over in Washington, and I'm here in the Midwest of the United States. I had made a tool that we could all kind of communicate and interact together online while we were doing the show, like share news stories, do chat, and things like that. And John brings up the chat function. I haven't done anything like the chat function. Well, I did briefly on a project I was doing for a church, actually. They hired me to create software to run their projectors. And that's something I could go down a long road of. I could eat up another hour on that project. It was pretty cool. But I started getting into not, oh, now the term is slipping my mind. I can't think of the term, but it's basically what you're doing with some of these new JavaScript technologies where you're not necessarily pinging a database, you're getting live responses. If the term comes to mind, I can't believe I forgot it. I'll bring it up again. But I did use that for a little chat function. There was in the church there were two computer stations. One was a guy running two of the projectors that was displaying the things that needed to be on those projectors, and then we had a middle projector. And we kind of like the live speak thing. We needed to communicate with each other, even though we were like 5 feet from each other. We're both looking in different directions and doing other things, so it was a way for us to chat together. But I also used the same technology that I can't remember to bring up the screens, because originally I'd done it with Ajax, and I was just doing a refresh like every second to make sure that a new slide didn't need to be coming up, and that worked for the most part, but it was still kind of laggy. The response wasn't amazing. But I keep, every once in a while I bring up the old live speak thing that we did, and I want to dive into it, and I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I thought what we were doing there was pretty cool. Are you doing pen tests before you deploy applications? Like in my job, I don't know what all we're doing as far as testing. I know we do the tests like I showed in the Selenium tests that I showed yesterday. I do work in that a bit, but I haven't had to do much involving deploying applications other than just knowing either making a tool to deploy it or knowing how to use the tool that was already put in place to deploy. But I haven't gotten into that much. I think I've got one more question slide. Let me make sure. Oh, yeah. This one was more of a segue into the event next week, which I'm expecting John at. Actually, John Rainey and the John that requested or had this question. But I wanted to talk about this really quick. I'm going to dive into that next week, and I'm going to continue it until I run out of things to talk about. So I'll go about an hour next week, and if I've got more I can talk about, then I'll just keep doing an event whenever I can to add to that kind of live series. But it's not just driving traffic, but getting value out of your site and making sure you're doing things right. And I think, as I mentioned on Facebook, that I'm going to use my own website for an example of what to do, what not to do, what's working for me, what isn't working for me, and things I know I could do better, but I don't, and how those could help me, things like that. But let's see. I almost used Django. The question is Django. I'm assuming it's asking me if I've used it. I apologize if you guys hear the siren in the background. I almost used it for a documentation project. We were looking at a whole bunch of different options for how to create a documentation website. And we ended up going with something called Sphinx, which is actually kind of cool. It took me a while to get into it and figure out what I was doing with it. Their documentation, it's funny because it's a documentation generator, but their documentation's kind of a mess. But I actually thought about doing a video on this someday, showing how this is set up. Actually, I thought about doing it today if we didn't have a lot of questions, but we actually ended up having a lot of questions. This is a pretty handy tool, and I know I'm veering off from the Django topic, but I haven't used it much, so I don't have much to talk about on it. But this tool here uses you basically write pages in what's called restructured text, which is kind of like Markdown, a little more in depth, a lot more things you can do with it. But you can write these simple pages. Oh, see you, John. It's good to have you in here. Hopefully I'll see you next week. But yeah, so you can write these simple pages in what's called restructured text, and this will chew it up and spit it out into a website form, which I actually have one up that I was gonna show as an example had I had more time to fill today. But I'll go ahead and just pull this up really quick. You've probably seen these actually. A lot of people use Sphinx to make their documentation. If you've ever been to read the docs for any documentation, you've seen this, I'm sure, this layout. But it's pretty neat. You just write these, like here's an example. This simple markup language called Restructured Text. And it's got some similarities to Markdown, but it is a little different, like a heading. It's done like this, whereas Markdown is done like this, stuff like that. But so like I could put some stuff in here and save that, and see, this is what I did have up there. But you can just run a quick, let me turn on the terminal, quick build. And Sphinx will do its thing. My computer's really chugging today. Usually it doesn't run this slow. It actually runs pretty quick. There we go. So it basically rebuilds that, adds what we added here. So anyways, I will get into that some other day, but I thought I'd bring it up. It's a Django question. Brought that to my mind. Well, I'll respond to the first question. I have used CentOS. Do that a lot at work. I'm more familiar with Ubuntu, but I have used it. And other than really just some of the commands being different, I don't really get into the networking itself much and the servers itself too much. But other than knowing that there's a few different commands to run, yeah, I don't know. That's probably my experience with it. On to the next one. Yeah, I'm sorry that you felt that way about the Selenium video. I think I mentioned several times in the video that it was kind of on the fly, and still getting used to the streaming software. So I screwed up quite a bit, and I'm also getting used to doing this live and not having the ability to edit it. Really, I can edit on YouTube. Like I could trim off the pause in the beginning of the video. There was like a several minute delay before I got started. So I apologize if you didn't enjoy that very much. But I'm still getting used to that. Like I said, I'm used to doing the series where I get a chance to plan it out a bit and then go in and edit every single mistake I made. One of the things that I did yesterday, I wish you guys could see the software, the streaming software. It's kind of cool. But like this terminal here is not actually there. It's on another monitor, and I just have it plopped here. And I know yesterday I kept doing terminal things, and I had it turned off, and I didn't realize it because I can still see it on my screen. But if I look back at the streaming software, I realized it wasn't there, so that was kind of embarrassing. Yeah, I'm aware of that with Selenium. Somebody brought up that you can use you can call the submit function. I really was just doing something quick what was on my brain and showing, because I don't. Thanks. I hope I get better at it too. I'm trying. But I was trying to get across the way you access elements. Is really what I was doing, but I was also getting kind of flustered with everything that was going wrong with the stream. And like right away when I first started the stream, I had to ban somebody making lewd comments in the chat, so I was already flustered. But also the tools I use with work, I already had set up, and we use a different driver. We're not a different driver, but we've modified it. So some of the things I was doing, I wasn't as quick to get the right answer out because I'm thinking about the tools I use at work and not the actual Chrome driver. But I'm glad you're even though you you didn't like the video, that you're still in it, and you're gonna hopefully stick with me as I get a little better at this. There's a lot. I did this. You're good. I did this. I think I saw that I did an event like 5 years ago when Google Hangouts was, I think, the only option you had to do this. So that was my only venture into this, and that's how I assumed that you still had to do it. And when I started looking into it, I didn't realize what was all involved. This streaming software is pretty cool. I mean, I can flip through these pre-made screens really easy. You know, I can flip over to Google presentation, which is this thing here with the questions. And then I can pop back over here to this kind of layout I've set up of different windows that are on different monitors. Mind you, I've got 5 monitors in front of me, so what you're seeing is actually a combination of several different monitors all piled into the view. So yeah, still getting used to it. But I think we're wrapping up, and there is apparently a Halloween party going on next door, and the sound, you might not be able to hear it, but it is driving me nuts. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm glad everybody came. This was a lot cooler. Oh, I missed the Ruby on Rails question. I have never used Ruby on Rails. I have never needed to, and I think by the time I had any interest in doing it, I realized that I don't know that it's necessarily on its way out, but it's definitely, there's other options out there that are better. So I think people that used it are sticking with it because they had to, because they've built entire applications with it, and to change the language you're using, that would be a complete overhaul. But yeah, so by the time I had interest in time to get into it, I realized that it's not I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like it's kind of dying out. Ah, thank you. I'm glad. Yeah. See. All right. So you've been around long enough to know my old videos, and it took me a little while to get good at just making the videos, even when they weren't live. And those old videos, I may not have admitted it back then, but I was kind of learning at the same time that I was teaching. I was using the videos I was making as a way to hammer in the things I was learning, hammer them into my brain. It was a way for me to, do something cool with YouTube, but at the same time, it forced me to actually learn what I was teaching. So it's pretty interesting. And it's a really good tool. And that might be maybe why I haven't had a lot of time or I haven't done a whole lot of them now, is that I'm doing this all day now more than I was before. And so I'm learning stuff fast during my job. But that's actually why I did that Selenium one yesterday, even though it was poorly done. Was I was doing something and I thought, man, I want to share this. So I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to share it. But I also realized that maybe I should put a little bit of planning into it before before I just share something. But I want to keep doing that because as I'm not necessarily learning like I did before when I first got started, but I am diving into totally different things that I haven't messed with before, and I think it'd be fun for me to share what I'm doing like that. I just got to get a little better at planning it and doing it better. But so I'm reading the chat. I can say that I was never stoned. However, I was generally very tired when I was doing those videos. And I was doing them in the basement when I lived with my ex-wife, and my desk was like right below the bedroom and the kids' bedroom. So I think I was not only tired because I'm doing them like 4 in the morning sometimes, but I was also trying to be quiet and talk slow and make sure I was getting things out. And so I, I won't even watch. I refuse to even pull those up because they're embarrassing to me. And I'd take some of them down because some of them are so out of date that I'm a little embarrassed about that. However, I mean, if you look at the date, you'd realize why they're out of date because they're old. But they still get more views than any of, not necessarily more views than any of my videos, but they're still very, very popular. And maybe just because of the title of the videos. But I may be pulling some of those down soon. But it's cool that you guys have been around, and hopefully I've gotten a little bit better. Yeah. The question is, do I consider taking my YouTube content more seriously in the future? I do, and that's why I haven't done as much. Like the Get series, it was the last one I did that was pre-recorded, and mostly because I'm trying to take it a little more seriously and not just put stuff out there. Although I kind of did that yesterday, but because I know I don't have a whole lot of time to plan out some big thing, I don't. I don't necessarily. Let's see. I know I've heard of Traversy Media, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what they do. I'm reading their website really quick. I think he's been around as long, if not longer than me. Oh, thank you. I wouldn't mind doing some crash courses. Again, I gotta get time to put them together, and make sure that they're, you know, good. But and thank you. I do hope they get better too. The live videos, because I think I can knock this out. I got to get more comfortable with the fact that I don't really get a chance to breathe or pause or think about what I'm doing like I do when I'm recording them. So that's kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Plus, managing the software that's showing you what I'm trying to present all at the same time. So I think I'll get better at it. But because I think these are good, they're good for me to keep getting content out there as long as they are good. I would love to redo the Selenium video at some point, also. But it's been interesting to me watch other people that got started around the same time I did, or some of the people that actually inspired me, like Bucky, the New Boston, was. I actually, honestly, necessarily don't really care for his videos too much, but I did watch a bunch of them when I first started getting into stuff, and it gave me the idea to kind of dive into this. Him and I have a completely different approach, which I think is good because if you like my approach, then that works for you, and that's good. If you like his approach, that works for you, that's good too. I think that's part of the problem with learning these technologies is you got to find the right person who can explain it the way you need to hear it, and one person's way of doing it isn't always what you need. I don't know where he is. I remember looking into him a little bit and doing some Facebook stalking several years ago to figure out where he was. I was assuming Boston, but that's probably wrong. I have used Bootstrap 4. That got brought up in the test live event we did last week. I haven't used it in any production since though, because it hasn't been really ready until recently, and most of anything I'm working on already has been using the old Bootstrap and trying to convert everything that was done with Bootstrap 3 into Bootstrap 4. Is an overhaul. It's not huge, but there are some elements that need to be changed. And it's just an overall that doesn't warrant the time that it would take to do that right now. Maybe when they officially release it, what is it, in an alpha stage now? Maybe when they officially release it and they stop really doing anything with 3, whatever, I might start doing that. I've been a couple of things I've done on my own. I've used it, and then I quickly realized that things had changed enough that I couldn't use it fast enough, so I'd switch back to 3 just because it was familiar. But I do like some of the things they have going in Bootstrap 4. I like the cards as opposed to the panels. I like what they're doing with the responsive stuff too. I was thinking about doing a video or something where we just kind of walk through Bootstrap 4 for fun. So might do that too. But yeah, I'm not really sure where Bucky's actually at. I'm going back to an older question. Now there is one interesting. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second, but I found something interesting the other day, and I don't even really know what to do with this information. But let me see if I can find it really quick. I find this interesting because of the name they're using. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. Let me get rid of this terminal. So it's not really what I'm doing. It's kind of what I wanted to do when I first started this. Actually, was to build an actual training. The digital craft was actually started in my office of the business I owned for a little bit. It was supposed to be a way to teach high school and middle school students, actually in a room, not online. So this is interesting to me that someone's done this. But what's more interesting to me is the name, because the name The Digital Craft kind of just came to me out of nowhere, and I don't know that it necessarily meant anything. I just can't imagine it was really the only thing that was available. All the ideas I had, I couldn't get a domain name for, and I just typed in The Digital Craft. So I thought of it as, like a trade, the craft, and it was available, and I took it and I went with it. yeah, maybe it is. That freaked me out. I watched some of his other videos, and I realized he doesn't totally sound like me, but that one video just scared the crap out of me. It kind of went into like a Twilight Zone for a minute. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that they used this name, and I didn't know I was just kind of curious if they had come across my site at any time, and that's how the name popped in their head, or if they came up with it on their own. Either way, I don't think it's lawsuit material or anything. I don't know. I don't really want to get into that anyway. But yeah, that guy from the rsync tutorial. That's good. But all right, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm really glad this went the way it did. I got the first test I did, we just had one or two people in there, and nobody really had any questions or anything, so I didn't really know what to do. And this went really well. So I'm hoping to do it again. I'm hoping to keep getting more questions. I prefer people use the form because it's a way for me to capture some info, which actually is something I'll discuss in the next event next week. But also a way for me to kind of grab all those questions and put them in one location, rather than doing it on Facebook where I got to go through all the threads every time I've asked, or people have asked me questions and stuff, and find them. This gives me a way to kind of organize them. So, yeah. Anyway, I might, if I get the itch, I might do another pop-up video or event this week sometime. I'd really like to show Sphinx. I don't know if anybody has any interest in it, but while it's on my brain, I'd like to show it, and I'll try and do a better job than the Selenium video. But yeah, thanks everybody. I'm glad. It's really cool to, talk to people that have been watching for this long. And hopefully I don't sound stoned and like I haven't slept in 4 days anymore. Anyway, thanks everybody. I'm gonna shut this thing down.